Hey, and welcome everybody to another Intent Company Live. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. Hope you're feeling lots of love with whatever you're doing. Don't want to go down the whole capitalist reason why Valentine's exists and all the different things. You know what? Just love one another, right? We'll just love one another. Jesus says they'll know you're a disciple by the way you love one another. So praise God for all that. Hallelujah. All right, what a way to welcome and start our 23rd live today. We're almost 33% of the way there. We are moving. We're doing it. So I just appreciate everybody who is joining, and I would love if you guys could help me out. Actually, Braden will give you instructions on how you can help us get more of this content out to more people.
Hey guys, welcome back, and make sure to smash that like button, subscribe, and make sure to hit that bell for notifications.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Braden. So today, Intent Company Live, what are we going to do? We're going to dig in on the top 10 A/B tests that you should be running. And actually, you know what? I don't even know if they're the top 10. They're just 10 tests that you could be running, and we'll dive in on that a little bit here. But we're going to talk about split testing, which is funny. Split testing is one of those things that everybody knows about. Everybody's like, oh, yeah, I get it. Oh, yeah. And no one does it. Like, no one. I've worked with very big companies, small companies, all kinds of companies, and it is very rare that you find an organization that is committed to doing regular split testing to see continual improvement. And so that is what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to give you the real brief rundown of our kind of daily announcements or updates. So just head over to intentcompany.com/live, and you can get access to all of our social media links. You can get access to our Focus and Fire workshop. Make sure you check out our customer journey assessment, as well as join the Intent Company group. As I've been mentioning this week, we have the Intent Company group app. So go on your Android, your iOS store, whatever you're using, and do a search for Intent Company Group, and you'll be able to download the app. You get instant access to a bunch of free trainings, cool community, all kinds of good stuff. And also make sure you check out our WOW Campaign Blueprint. That's one of the courses, workshops that are found inside of the Intent Company Group. So make sure you go and check it out. Okay, let's dig in on some split testing. So before I get into the actual split testing and some ideas, okay, I want to just talk a little bit of theory on the idea of split testing. Okay, so let's just back up and speak general growth about pretty much everything all the time. Growth is incremental. Growth is a process, right? We see this in nature. We see this in our own lives. We see it everywhere. But as I've mentioned a few times before, there is like this mindset that we have that we believe that success is like this event, right? Like that if I just, I do this right thing, I switch to this, and as soon, if I start that, and TikTok just started, and I get the TikTok thing, and like everything's just gonna blow up. And it's like, it just doesn't work like that. I mean, sure, you might be able to see some cases where they did this and that took off, but honestly, almost everything, success is incremental. Success is a step-by-step process. You get a little better, you keep learning, you go. And we tend as people, we tend as entrepreneurs to not have a lot of patience for that process, right? And if you think about it, everything in the world is trying to pull you down to their idea, right? You can't scroll in your feed. You can't go check your LinkedIn DMs without getting somebody to say, oh, we got the this and the that, and as soon as you do this, you're going to get your calendar's full, and you get 40 appointments, and you're going to make this and make that, and there's all these grand stories like this system is going to change everything, right? And so one thing that I always talk about, because we build systems, we have trainings, we have workshops, we do marketing, but what I always say to my clients is, I believe that our experience, what we do, will give you great positive results. Okay, I think our experience, all those things work. But at the end of the day, it's the data that dictates what's working or not. Right? You got to think, you got to understand, you got to look at the data. I think we know how to make good content. I think we know how to write good emails, landing pages. We know how to do a good sales presentation. But my experience and me thinking that doesn't mean anything if the page doesn't convert. It doesn't mean anything if nobody clicks on the ad. It doesn't mean anything if you don't open the email or do the whatever, right? So any consultant, any idea, any advice should be held in this kind of context that I'm buying their experience to help move me further down the process, but I must immediately adopt a split testing, a learning, a growth-oriented mentality to see it be the fullness that it needs to be. So if you remember last week, I think I did the book reviews, right? Talked about all the different books. And I talked about one of my favorite books called The Lean Startup from Eric Ries. And it was all about how like he helps software companies launch and how you really you shouldn't spend all of your money, all your time, all your effort in this like going all in on this idea that you haven't tested yet. And so he developed this idea of this feedback loop, right? He talked about the minimum viable product and things like that. So I'll be honest, it was that book when I read that gave me this idea for split testing. Now, split testing, again, is something everybody knows about. But when you think about it in this context, it's like, it kind of clicks. So let's just take a look at this. So the first thing you got to figure out whenever you're doing any testing is where are you right now? What's your current location? And this can be for anything, right? Like how many email addresses do you have? How many sales do you have? What's your close percentage? What's your appointment show rate? All of these things are your set current location. I am currently here. And then you have a desired destination, right? I've got X% close rate. I want this close rate. I've got this. I want that, okay? So you've got to first understand where are you? Where do you want to go? And then you've got to develop a strategy, okay? Strategy. Basically, what do I think is going to work to do this? Now, here's the thing. This is what everyone sells, right? Their strategy. Oh, if you adopt our strategy and do this and do that, instant success, all this stuff's going to be awesome. I hope so. Probably not, though, right? But if you believe in a strategy, and that's why, too, before I go down this, I have another presentation that I do where I talk about the shiny new toy syndrome. Okay, this is the biggest. So again, if we all think that success, not all think again, don't want to speak in alls and in exacts, right? If we tend to have this idea that success is an event, right? And we all fall into that, like, man, if I just got this thing, or if I got hired that person, this thing, it's all going to work out. If I believe that, then what happens is I end up quickly adopting and buying a program and implementing something. And if I don't see success in like the next 90 days, I freak out. That sucks. I don't want this. I scrap it. And then what do? I go find a brand new thing. All right. Oh, the TikTok thing. And I'm going to buy the ads. And oh yeah, the content marketing stuff. I heard email is pretty good. And what happens is you just start to pick and choose all these random little tactics. And that's what you're doing. You're going after a tactic. And when you don't see the immediate results that you want, because that's your expectation, because success is just an event, it's this magic bullet, it's just going to happen, right? When it doesn't happen, you get frustrated, you get disgruntled, you say things like online marketing doesn't work, oh, I tried that, content marketing's a sham, blah, 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 and you just throw it all out and then go try something else. And so most organizations I've worked with have done that a lot. And what happens is there's no continuity in what you're doing, right? You start and stop things all the time. In fact, you probably start a lot of things. You know, if this is going to hurt, let it hurt good. Okay. Mr. Business Owner, how many times have you gone to your team and been like, oh, I got it. We're going to do this. It's going to be amazing. I talked to the so-and-so and this is happening and we're doing it. Get everybody all pumped up. You spend a bunch of money. You take everybody off the jobs that they're already doing. Everyone focuses on implementing it. And sometimes before it's even implemented, you're disenchanted by the idea. Not working, not being fulfilled the way it should be. I heard this new thing. We're now going to go over here and do that. And you scrap it. And you waste so much time. You waste so much money. You waste your team's attention and focus. Has that ever happened to you? Have you ever heard of that happening before? Of course you have. Have I done that before? Absolutely. Right? So it's part of our natural tendency. So we got to realize, wait a minute. Success isn't an event, it's a process. So whatever strategy you have, one, you want to make sure it's a strategy and just not a random tactic, right? It's going to be part of an overall thing. And so like for us, our strategy, customer journey marketing. All right, so you can see that our turn customers into brand advocates. It's an overarching philosophy. It's a strategic kind of approach. Now, inside of that, there's other types of things you do. Like, oh yeah, how are we going to use content marketing and social media, and how are we going to build the content? How are we going to do this stuff, right? So when you come up with an idea, come up with a strategy, you got to do this crazy thing with your strategy. And a lot of great ideas die here. You have a great strategy, but you don't act. You don't actually implement it, right? It doesn't get implemented correctly. It doesn't get implemented fully or quick enough, but you got to implement. So you have an idea, you implement, and then you do this super other crazy step called measure. You actually look at what happens. So when you have a strategy, what you're basically doing is you're saying, we're here, but what I want to be is here. I believe what's going to get us there is this strategy. So I implement, and again, going back to Eric Ries's The Lean Startup, don't spend 6 months building it and all this time. Like, get a minimum viable product. What is the minimum thing that you could throw out to the marketplace to test if it's working, to get feedback, to see what's happening, right? So you implement, you act, and then you measure. And you say, hey, what about this is working well? What's not working? And then what do? You allow the data to adjust your strategy. And you say, you know what? This is working kind of good, but we're not getting the click rate or the open. What could we do? Well, let's adjust that. And then what do? You implement. And then what do? You measure. And then you adjust your strategy. And then you act and you measure. And you create this flywheel effect where you're just seeing continual improvement. I mean, if you think about this, even if you started with a terrible idea, if you consistently did this over a long enough period of time, yeah, you might go down, then you go up, then you go down, then you go up. Over a period of time, you're going to get success. You're going to be making progress. But think about this strategy versus the idea of I randomly start something, implement, give it 90 days, doesn't work, scrap it. Right? Like, it just doesn't work that way. All the successful things that you see in our lives, we see it, they're incremental. We learn, we get better, we learn, we get better. Okay, so I call this Sam. Sam is one of your best employees. Strategy, action, measure. So you got to employ Sam with everything you're doing. So this is like super important to think about with whatever we're doing, is that we've got to test. Now I'm going to give you just like an idea real quick before we get into some specifics, okay? One thing you want to think about is a strategy, like a good strategy to process, right? Like, there's steps involved. It's not just this one-off, kind of tactic. Okay, so let's just use, I'll just use the micro to macro strategy. So this is one of the strategies that we use to get new people's attention, right? So if you've seen our customer journey stuff, if you've seen our customer journey assessment, there's different strategies based on what are you trying to do. Get a new person to know you're aware, build affinity, action, advocacy, all that stuff, right? So macro to micro strategy is that the big idea is this. You make a long 20, let's say, to 60-minute video. Interviews, lives, like we're doing here, podcast, whatever you want to call it, right? Do a video podcast. This video podcast, after you record it, you edit. And you make small videos. We call them micros, 5 to 15 minute videos, right? 20 to 60 minutes, 5 to 15. You make a bunch of these. You put these on YouTube. And then what do? You edit these and you make reels, right? So we're talking like 30 to 60 seconds. And you make reels, okay? And all of these things that you're sending out into the world all have a call to action. And that call to action is usually to give some contact information, name, email address, phone number, what have you, for something valuable. It could be the macro asset you build or some free report. Like we have our customer journey assessment. We have our WOW campaign blueprint. We have our intent company group. These are free things that we give away of value that people pay for with their contact data, right? So that goes in. Then what happens? Well, then we have an email series. And we send emails. We send a series of emails that are leading to a phone conversation. I don't know how to put phone, but we just do a demo, right? So we do a demo, and then from here, people either close, yes, no. Okay, so this is an example. This is a system. This is the idea of the system. Inside of this are all kinds of metrics and data points, right? That we have watch rates for all of our videos. We have clicks. How many people clicked to go here? What's the opt-in percentage? When we send an email, what's the open rate? What's the click rate? When they land on the demo page, do they opt in for the demo? When they opt in for a demo, do they show up? When they show up, do they buy something? Do they not buy something? So you've got like 50 things inside of here that you could be split testing. So once it's in a system and we understand the flow of what's going on, we have all these different levels and dials that we can turn up to get better throughput, okay? So just high level, that's a concept, that's an idea. Look at that, that's a great marketing strategy. You're welcome. There you go. All right, so let's talk. Let's talk about elements that you can split test. So I just gave you, again, kind of an idea. Now, if we were going to sit down together and I was going to have some time with you, I could go into more specifically. Look at your marketing processes. Look at your sales processes. Look at your onboarding processes. Look at all the different processes you have. And every process has the ability to split test. Now, before I go into some of the specifics, this is why it's so important for you to actually have systems. So you hear me say all the time, systems scale, people don't. Because a system, because it has a process and there's certain steps, you can look back and say, oh, wow, that one has this level, that's that opt-in, that's here. How could I make it better? How could I add more here? How could I do this there? But when you have people that are just kind of operating out of their own flow, they're just kind of doing their own thing, it's hard to split test that, right? Because you got some people that do a really good job. You got some people that don't do a really good job. You got some people that are good at certain aspects, but not good at others. So there's too many variables. Okay, so there's too many variables. So actually, before we get started here, there's all kinds of split testing. Okay, all kinds of split testing that you can be doing. Let me erase some of this stuff. So let me just show you this to make this as simple as possible. Okay, so there's different kinds of testing. There's A/B testing, and then there's multivariate. I can spell. I promise. Variant testing. Okay, these are the two main methodologies for testing. Okay, so I guess I should get into this before I talk about some ideas. So you got A/B testing, multivariant testing. Multivariate testing is where let me go A/B first. So A/B testing, basically what you're testing is that you're looking at 50% of the people have one experience, 50% of the people have a different experience, and then you clearly look at which one is doing better. Again, based on your strategy, because you start with, here's where I am, here's where I want to go. I've got emails that are going out. I want a greater percentage of people to click on these links. So it's very easy. You send 2 separate emails. Boom. This is a data point. That's a data point. You learn, you improve, you keep implementing your positive changes. Okay. This is a very simple way to do split testing. And so we're going to talk pretty much only about A/B testing right now. Multivariant testing is where you could have multiple. It's way more than just 2. You could be testing, 10 different things, page layouts and links and colors. And, the more variance that you create, here's the problem. It's harder to determine which change actually made the difference, right? So the first one I'm going to talk about is subject headlines, like an open rate, right? So maybe open rate's a bad idea because there's a really clear thing. Let's talk about click rates on an email. You send off an email. When you do an A/B test, you're literally changing one thing about each. So maybe it's the copy, the button, the whatever. You're testing that one thing, okay? Maybe it could be one messaging, one value proposition, we'll call it. But you basically have one thing. I'm testing the color of the button versus the other color of the button. I'm testing the text of the button versus the text of this button. I'm changing the call to action, the offer, the whatever, and you're doing A/B testing. If you make too many changes, right, it's going to be too difficult to understand, well, why did people like option B versus option A? I had 10 different things going on. Was it the color of the button? Was it the link? Was it the offer? What was it? So it's hard to have what they call statistically significant results. It's hard for you to understand statistically exactly what are the things that work in order to make the impact, right? So, there's many organizations, large organizations, awesome software companies, things like that do a lot of the multivariate testing. Unless you are a split testing pro and you have already A/B tested everything you possibly can and you are super dialed in, just don't worry about multivariate testing right now. Let's just focus on A/B testing. Let's keep it simple. Let's just take intentional pursuit towards improved gains and everything that we're doing. Okay, so number one, headlines and subject lines. So I would just say, let's say subject lines. Okay, so email marketing is still very effective. Email marketing works great. But if you think about an email, when an email goes out, you've got two main things that are happening, right? You got the open. Does somebody even open your email? It's going to be really hard to get somebody to take your desired action if they never open the email, right? So the first thing you got to figure out is the open rate. The second thing that you got to think about is the call to action, the click rate, the whatever you're wanting to do, right? So the first step you want to think about is this is number one. The first one is your subject line, okay? So subject lines have the greatest impact in open rates. And so I'm not even going to go through like all the best practices. There's tons of stuff. Actually, I might even have my copywriter do one of these one time and talk about the best practices with subject lines and this. But again, at the very least, just split test. And this is where AI actually is pretty handy. We have our intent AI tool in our software. And you can find them everywhere, ChatGPT, whatever, stuff like that. But write a headline, your best headline about whatever your email is about. Throw it into AI and say, create a split test idea, right? So you can go and it'll automatically rewrite the subject line with a new idea and just put one in each and send 50% of the traffic to one, 50% of the traffic to another. So hopefully the software that you're using automatically does that. A little shameless plug, our Intent Company app does that. We have A/B testing built into everything. So it's very easy where you just create version A, version B, and the software should send half the traffic to one, half the traffic to other. You get the data and you realize, oh, wow, this email got a 17% higher open rate than another. Now, Chelsea, you know what we need to do? We're going to add a comment in here after this. Maybe I'll even put it on the intentcompany.com/live page. We have a split testing calculator. Okay, so this is another thing that's important to note is with the data on a split test, you need to make sure that you have enough information to actually validate that the result is accurate, right? If you've got 10 people who clicked here and 7 that clicked over there and it was only 100 people that went to each, is that one really better than the others? Like, no, you need to have what they call statistically significant results. So that means that you need to have enough data, enough information to actually make it happen. Yeah, if you go and look in our drive, Chels, it's should be called Split Testing Calculator. And so we should be able to just throw that Google Drive link up. It's a Google Sheet. You can make a copy of it. It's real easy. You just put sent 1,000 emails, 50 opens, 12 opens over here, and then it calculates and it says, is this enough data for you to have confidence that this test is completed? Okay. So that's one caveat to doing split testing. Don't stop it too early. Really look at what the data suggests. Okay. So subject lines for open rates. Subject line for open rates. The same idea applies to advertising, right? So usually you like your headline. If you're buying ads like Google ads, Facebook ads, the headline, the main copy up at the top is usually the main kind of like attention grabber. So split test, 50%, 50%. Okay. So the next step, number 2, would be calls to action. Now, calls to action are everywhere in your sales and marketing. They're all over the place. But you can have, in your email, you absolutely need to be measuring your call to action for like whatever you want to do. Now, what do you want people to do? Click on a link, go to a page. Do you want them to sign up for something? Do you want them to schedule a call? Do you want them to buy something? Whatever your call to action is. And then you got to think about like, well, how could you adjust your call to action, right? There's lots of different ways. Some of the simplest ways is like, like what's the color of the button? If you have a button, what color is it? Well, make one green, make one blue, make one red, make one black. What's the difference between those? Okay. How about the text, right? A good way to think about it, if you're going to make a button, here's just a good rule of thumb. When you want somebody to do something by clicking on a button, you need to answer this question. So think about it, you're the user, and the user says, I want to, and whatever comes next is the text. I want to get this guide. I want to buy now. I want to learn more. I want to download thing. Just whenever it says I want to, put the rest of the text in there. That's a good place to start. Okay. And then, play around with words, play around with phrases, play around with the combination of what you have, but just A/B split test. So you got colors, you got text, you got sizes, placement. So where are you putting the calls to action? How many do you have? Do you have one button at the bottom of the email? Do you have a second button up high? Do you have text links? Do you have all of those different things you can split test? So think about it. How easy is that? Super easy. But if you stick to it and you're consistent and you do it over a long period of time, it doesn't have to be that long really, but if you do it consistently over a period of time, you're going to see incrementally better results. So think about it. You may have bought advertising in the past, right? You bought ads and you're like, oh, advertising doesn't work. Maybe it's your landing page. Maybe it's the emails you're sending after. Maybe it has nothing to do with the actual ads that you're running, the traffic you're buying, but it has everything that happens after. You don't know until you test. Okay? So the next thing to test would be, we'll call it like content, especially offer. Okay? So the content is really important, right? What are you saying? So like for instance, now this is hard because you're talking about multivariant, right? If you write completely different copy, like let's say you have a landing page, so you want somebody to opt in, right? And you get multiple paragraphs. Okay. Now, yeah, you could change the headline, change the opening sentence, you could change stuff like that, but sometimes you do want to change the entire copy. But what you want to do is you want to think about, okay, I'm testing a concept. One concept, I'm going to be super direct. I'm just going to talk about what the product does. I'm going to get really to the point, bullet points, this and that. The other one, maybe I'm going to test more of like the backstory, try to like emotionally connect with people. So I'm going to like have it be a little longer, more descriptive, and include like story. So that's still one thing. You're doing more of like direct copy versus like emotional kind of driven copy. So test that. Then let's say the direct response copy works better. They just like it more, the bullet points. Now you think about, okay, how could I adjust that? What if I made it longer? What if I made it shorter? What if I added more bullets? What if I added pictures instead, or this, or add that? So you just keep split testing each of those different elements. Now, I will say with any kind of call to action, with call to action content, okay, so you're trying to think the actual words, text, the thing that you're using to get somebody to do something, you always want to test the offer. Okay, so like, what are you offering? So one thing you got to think about, and we talk about this in our, I don't know, I forgot what video I talked about, but we talk about Bob, okay, the benefit of the benefit. So just generally talking about the features and the advantages, like this is what the doohickey does, this is what you're going to get. That's less effective than when you're talking about the benefit. Like, what are you going to get out of this? And then we talk about with Bob means benefit of the benefit. So I always, use this example all the time, right? Nobody buys a light bulb. Nobody cares about a light bulb. They buy them, but they're not like, oh yeah, I just really want to get that LED or that filament and that thing. Like, no, nobody cares. What do they care about? They care about light. But you know what? It's not even necessarily like, yeah, I just really need some light in my life. It's like, no, I want to have a certain work environment. I want to have a certain feel when I'm watching a movie. I want to have, I want to see well when I'm cooking dinner or whatever. That's why there's different color lights in different rooms for different applications, because the nuance gets into the experience. People buy based off of experience, right? So you got to figure out with whatever you're offering, what is the experience that you're really delivering? What is the benefit of the benefit, and start to split test those. You might not actually really understand why people buy your products or services. You know what I mean? Like, you might not really get it. Especially if you do home stuff. I was talking to a gentleman earlier today that owns a really cool home theater. Sets up like movie theater rooms and the lighting and automated controls of everything, like super super nice high end cool stuff. And why does somebody spend $100,000 to rebuild all this other stuff? Is it because they want to watch a movie? No. You can watch a movie anyway. You don't need all that. What does he want? He wants an experience. And if we're really honest, it's probably, I want to impress the people that come to my house. Let's be honest, right? So they're willing to spend that kind of money to create what? The experience, to impress people, or maybe just, to really create just this wow moment, right? You want people to come over. So when you start to really dive in deep on why people do what they do, there's subtle, deeper motivational, reasons for that. So you need to test what those ideas are. And so those are really great. Test the offer. Okay. So that was 3, I think. All right. Number 4, layout and design. Okay, so with anything you're doing, whether it's an email, landing page, an opt-in, your website's kind of layout, it can even be video type stuff, thumbnails, all kinds of different things. You want to think there's layout and design. So there's the combination of colors, where things are placed. Is your form above the fold? Is it on the right-hand side? Is it on the left-hand side? Is it... is there a video next to it versus a picture versus the whole layout of everything is stuff that you can easily test, right? How quick do you ask for the call to action? How quick do you do this? So you got a landing page that's been running for a while. Maybe you got an opt-in form in a certain place. You know what? Duplicate that page, put it in a new location, run 50% of the traffic to one, 50% to the other, and how does it perform? All right, where should your newsletter sign up be? Where is your add to cart button? Where, all of those different layout and elements, just moving where they are, can change. So a big, something that will help you a ton with that. So this is a little more advanced technique, is by adding a heat map software in user flow software. So we have that. That's part of our offering. We've got kind of a tool that we implement for our clients. And what it does is it looks at where people put the mouse, right? Are they gravitating over here? Are they hovering over this? Are they hovering there? So it gives you a whole heat map of how people interact with your website. So you can kind of get the idea of where people are trying to go. And if people are putting their mouse in a certain area that's not the area that you want them to, well, figure out why. Why do they keep going over there? Or better yet, just put what you want to happen over there and see if that improves results. Okay, so some of that stuff can help a lot. All right, number 5, images, videos, multimedia. So multimedia can have a huge effect on anything you're doing. Again, let's just use an email. Super simple test. Actually, I do this all the time. You got your email series that are going out, right? You got your email drips, your follow-ups, what have you. Send off the email. What does it look like if you added a picture, right? Could just be a lifestyle picture, just some kind of graphic. Put it in there. Or if you have a link that goes to a video, why not take a screenshot of the video player and put that in there and link to it and test? Send 50% without the graphic, 50% with. How does that make a difference, right? Let's say you do that. You run that test for a while and you're like, you know what? Having the link, having the picture of the thumbnail of the video just destroys the other strategy. Totally what works. Okay, great. How can you go deeper now and test that? Well, what thumbnail do you use? Is it better to have, just a natural flow talking head kind of waving my hands around like I'm doing? Do you have text over it? What color is the play button? Is it a screenshot of a YouTube video? Do you have something that's off-brand? you can test all of those things. So you start to refine it even deeper. Like if you had an image, right? Are images of people, do those work better? Or is it more like graphic or like animated type things? Test it. Each little thing. Now, again, I'm just giving you these ideas, but this should be stirring some stuff up in you. Now, the first thing you got to do, again, I'm going back to where I started, is know your numbers. Know what you've been currently doing, what the flow has been. Look at what the biggest issue is. I said this a little while. Actually, I'll jump ahead. So one of them is timing and frequency. I'm going to talk about. And sometimes it's when you send the communication, right? So like we had the problem before where our sales development reps were making a bunch of calls, booking a bunch of appointments, and nobody was showing. Not nobody, but very small percentage of people actually showing up for the calls. And we're like, wait a minute, why is that happening? So what do? We test. So we change the reminders. We change when they get the reminders. We changed text versus, email versus text and this thing and that thing. And now we're getting a way better opt-in rate, right? So that's something that's really important that you can be doing, but you need to know your numbers. You need to know I'm getting 35% show rate. Now I'm getting a 65% show rate. Fantastic. How do I get 65 to 75 to 85? So on. Okay. All right. Number 6. I'll go back to the one I just mentioned briefly, but number 6, form fields in length. Okay. So again, if you're going to acquire a lead, you got to acquire contact information, right? Somebody's got to fill out a form. They got to put their name, they got to put their email, they got to put a request, they got to have a quote, whatever the case may be, right? So like, let's say, you have like a free quote button, right? Lots of businesses in the services realm have some kind of like quote button, okay? Or get more information. So what fields do you ask for? How much information do you require up front? At what stage, right? General rule of thumb, the more fields, the more field data that you ask for, right? So, and the more intimate the questions, right? Like, getting a bunch of form fields saying, how much money did you make last year? How many employees do you have? What's your role? Have you things? They're like, whoa, hey, who are you? Right? So the more you ask, the more questions you ask, and the more intimate, if you will, the fields you're asking to fill out, typically the lower percentage of people that will complete it. But the people who do complete it are a higher quality lead. So what's better? I don't know. You got to test it. Would you rather have 10 times the people fill out a really simple short field, but they actually never really become a customer, versus you get, again, a 10th less to actually fill out this longer field, but they have a much higher close percentage? That's why, again, you're testing in like a specific thing, like, okay, I'm getting more people to fill out this form, but you can't just look at it in isolation. You got to look at it in the full system, the full path to purchase, because what happens after they fill out that form? Do they open my emails? Do they schedule the appointment? Do they buy the product? Well, I don't know. You got to have the entire thread, the entire customer journey, because it might not be beneficial to get 10 times the people to fill out a form. That actually, you can't feed your family with form entries. You can't pay your employees with form entries. No, it's revenue, right? There's key business indicators that you're trying to impact: revenue, margin, customers, lifetime value. Like, these are the big markers of success that you're trying to influence. And this is just a step in that whole process. And how does me adjusting this step influence the end results that I'm really trying to get? Okay, so test form fields, layouts. There's, some examples of that too are like multi-step forms. So since we're talking about forms exactly, right? You might have like a request for something, be like, yeah, sure, put your name, put your email address, and then it hits next. And as soon as it hits next, because as soon as they hit next, you grab their name and their email, maybe their phone number, right? Make it super simple. The next thing that pops up is more detailed questions. So even if they don't fill out the rest of the remainder of the questions, you still have their contact information. You can email them, you can do things, you can go after that. But the ones that obviously fill out all the rest of them, that's a higher quality lead. And you can treat each of them differently, right? You can think about that. Somebody who only will give you name and email you're probably going to have a different messaging with that person than someone who filled out like this and all the data they need for a full-blown quote, right? So that's, again, where behavioral automation comes in, which you can check out our automation content that we made. But I'm mixing all the stuff up together now. But it's because everything affects everything. So test form fields, test length, figure out how you can make it easy. Another idea with form fields. So there's a software out there that popularized the idea of conversational forms. The company's called Typeform. Great company. I personally don't use them anymore, but I replicate kind of like what they do. But the idea is, rather than having a form where it's like first name, last name, email, phone number, and they just got to fill in the information, right? And they hit go. What they do is ask a question. So all it is one thing. What's your first name? What's your email? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? How about this? And so you ask individual questions and you capture it. It's almost like more like a survey, but really all it is it's a form that is supported by conversational text. So it feels easier to leave the information. So you know what? Split test. Split test conversational forms versus static forms. Just another thing to split test. All right. So let's talk about landing page elements. Okay. Landing page elements, if you think about a landing page, it's got all kinds of different pieces to it. You got headlines and subheads and the social proof and forms and all these different pieces, right? So you can think about your landing page in that way. You got to think people read top to bottom, right? Mostly. People also really read headlines. You've probably done that. You've skimmed. So you've seen the main headline, subhead. Those are the two most important parts of a landing page. Your headline and your subhead are the most important things, okay? Then you do this. Even if you're interested in the thing, you're not going to read all the text. What do? You scroll. And what do? You look at the headlines over the paragraphs. So make sure you get super solid headlines over each section. And then you know what else people always do? You do it. You scroll to the bottom and look for the bottom part. Why? Because it tends to summarize the whole offer, right? Some people do the PS or whatever, but your main call to action is a summary of everything that you listed above, right? And then if you kind of like it, you might go back up and look at it, right? So each of those elements in your landing page can be split tested. Again, don't do too many changes at once. Make sure you're doing A/B testing to see a better, throughput. But the one thing that's in there that is now kind of 8, I'll jump to 8 on the landing page specifically, is social proof. Okay, social proof is one, if you don't believe me, test not having social proof versus having it. What's social proof? Testimonies, customer reviews, videos, endorsements, any kind of thing where someone else is saying what you do is cool and you're worthy of listening to. Okay, so the more of those that you have, I would assume you're going to get a better conversion rate. But here's the thing. What converts better? Text versus video. What converts better? What's the best one to put? Do you put a big video at first? Do you put a bunch of text ones? How do you manage all of this and how do you organize it is going to give you a different output, right? Even if if you got big budget and maybe you're doing celebrity endorsements, athletes, things like that, split test. What athlete? What do they say? Do you like video? Do you like text? All of this stuff you can test, right? But social proof, we know, has a massive impact on conversion rate and action, and you can split test all of that tremendously, okay? All right, number 9 is timing and frequency. I mentioned that with the appointment settings, but when you do what you do has a major impact, okay? Somebody opts in for your newsletter. How often do you send them a newsletter? Is it once a week? Is it once a month? Test it. Your follow-ups. Do you email, in your sales process, trying to get somebody on the call to have a sales deal? How often do you email them? How often do you make a cold call? How often do you, how many times do you do what things? Split test, split test, split test. The data will tell you what works and what doesn't. Keep making it better. All right, number 10. I did a whole session on this, but personalization. Test personalization. What do we mean? So if you didn't see some of my other content, personalization is where you're how can you personalize your messages to match them? So even things like putting somebody's first name in an email is a form of personalization, right? But what about getting information about like their interest, what they're in? If you're doing sales messages, do you get information off of their LinkedIn account to know what they're into, right? Do you spend time and actually look at their interest, their role, who left them a review? Do you leave that do you put that personalized stuff into your message? What is the output of that? See, here's the interesting thing. You might think like, oh my goodness, it would take so much longer if I went through everyone's LinkedIn page, looked at their testimonials, looked at the posts they were doing, and then had to like add a section or a sentence to every email talking about, oh, I saw that you were sharing this, or you just got that promotion, congratulations, whatever. All right, you'd be like, I can't do that. It's going to take too long. Yeah, but what if you got a 10 times conversion rate when you did it? Again, you got to look at this in the context of your end result. You're looking for revenue. You're looking for margin. You're looking for lifetime value. The same, you could send a tenth of the messages, but you do it in this way and you're making double the revenue. But what's the better way to do it? Again, you got to test personalization. So you got to just think about what are all the different ways that you can apply a personal approach to people. And then again, this kind of connects with the form aspect, because maybe in your forms, you should ask more personal information. So we did this before where you'll see this. You'll see a form, right? Name, email, so-and-so. And then what we'll do is we'll think about what are the 4 main reasons that someone would buy your product, right? Like we did this with an MSP before, and it was like, or a telecom reseller. It was like cost of ownership, like ease of use, I forgot. There's like 4 main reasons why people buy. And on the form, it has all this stuff. And then it asked, hey, which of these 4 is most important to you? Cost of ownership, ease of use, support, whatever the other one was. And people check the box. Like, I'm really interested in keeping my cost down. Total cost of ownership. They click that, they hit submit. Now, somebody literally just told you how to sell them. They just told you what they're most interested in. So if they say, I'm most interested in that, why wouldn't you send follow-up emails, messages that are now geared towards the thing that they said was most important? So you could literally have 4 follow-up lines, right? If they pick this, you get these emails. They pick this, they get that. It's like, those choose your adventure books I used to read back in like elementary school, right? It's like, are you going to, you get to the end of the chapter, it goes, should you follow Timmy into the cave or go get mom? All right, jump to chapter 4. Choose your own adventure. All right, so you give people that option. Well, now they're getting an individual flow of communications that matches the thing that they just said. Even that idea, is that idea valuable or not? Test it. Send 1 email to everyone versus send 4 personalized emails based on what they answer. What one works better? And then think about everything else we just talked about. Then how could you improve the headline so you get more opens? How could you improve the call to action to get more clicks? How could you improve the timing and frequency to get more of the people that schedule an appointment to get through? See, everything affects everything. They're all just dials. And as you improve the dial and it gets an aggregate, you get this compounding effect that this split testing is going to do. And all of a sudden you're like, whoa, this is super valuable. This is totally working. And all of a sudden it wasn't that LinkedIn ads don't work. It's that everything that happened after people clicked on the ad didn't work. And so the more things that work, the more flexibility you have, the more things you can test, the more output, and the easier and more effective your life is. So this is the type of stuff. How could you do this on a regular basis? Start with something simple. Some of those ideas seemed like too crazy, too out there. Just do something simple. Do something simple. Test, improve. I didn't even mention things like sales scripts and there's a million things you can split test, right? Operations. How do you onboard a customer? How do you deliver a product? What do you do after product? All of those things you can test. Okay. But just make sure that when you're testing with the end in mind. These are the key business, drivers. This is the type of stuff that needs to be impacted for this to make sense. And so now you're not longer infected with the shiny new toy syndrome. You're now taking strategic action. You're making measurable progress. And if you keep doing that, strategy, action, measure, strategy, action, measure, and you don't stop, you're going to see continual results, continual improvement. All right. So that is a crash course in split testing. So as I mentioned, we've got software, we got tools, we got services, we got all the stuff that helps do this stuff. So if this sounds like a great idea, you'd love it, but you need help with it, go to intentcompany.com, click on consulting, schedule a time to talk. We'll give you some ideas. But super appreciate you all. Thank you so much for commenting and sharing and engaging and doing everything with our content. Really appreciate you. We'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Central Time for another Intent Company Live. This is Billy Robbins. I hope you enjoyed the content, and we will talk again tomorrow. All right. Have a fantastic day. Thanks, everybody.